Welcome to Module 10. This is Dr. Schaefer again, and we're going to continue our discussion of the importance of working with the board, but we have to dig a little deeper first and look at the core beliefs and commitments that they have, what do boards really believe, and then theories of action for change. And that's pretty important for us to understand that one of the big purposes of a school board is to arrange, facilitate, and prompt change to occur. Now we come back to the diagram that you're familiar with, and we started looking at last week where the above the line is governance, and that's where the boards operate, and then below the line, which is the superintendent and central office staff. Keep in mind though that while school boards and it's kind of an unusual relationship, and you have to get used to this idea that while school boards and superintendents are partners, they're not equal. The school board has the right to hire and fire and evaluate the superintendent. Superintendent doesn't really have the right to tell a board what to do. That's not how it works. The board is elected or appointed, and then the board is the governing body of the school district. So boards govern, which is above the line. Superintendents manage, which is below the line. And where we get into trouble is when the board starts to dip down below the line and go into management. Superintendent really is the only person who goes back and forth between governance and management. And that's a really important concept to understand. While superintendent's primary job is management, they're also a part of the board. And they have a right to present to the board, to bring issues to the board, lots of different things. So we'll talk about that. Core beliefs and commitments are the whole concept that starts where we are with the school board. Now, when you go to a board training or you have a board training, most often they start with talking about relationships, because boards know that they need help with relationships, and they're not necessarily always good at it. So great superintendents do what? They operate in the realm of building those relationships with board members. And I've heard some superintendents describe this as the process by which they, every 2 weeks, within that 2-week period, they meet every single one of their board members for a period of time to discuss with them the governing of the school district. And so the question then, as we start thinking about the relationships between the board and the superintendent, every board member has to ask themselves this question: am I satisfied with incremental improvements? In other words, can we just kind of nudge this thing along? Or is it really bad right now, the way things are, and we have to change things as quickly as possible? That's an incredibly important concept to understand, because it means different things. If you can work with the idea of incremental improvements, that means you're in pretty good shape already, and you're just improving. But if you're in a district and you come onto the board to begin to serve, or you continue your service with the board, you have to know, where is the school? Where is the district functioning? All children achieving at grade level. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having that as a core belief. It should be your core belief. No matter where your board is located, where your school district is located, then what you should be seeing is that the expectation from the board is that all children achieve at grade level. Second thing is that all children are reaching potential. Now, what does that mean? What's the difference between that and achieving at grade level? Well, we know that some students achieve higher than grade level. And so we want that. We do want that to happen. We want it to be possible that all children reach the potential that they have. And that means even special needs students. Of course, that's backed up by school law. But we have to talk through the board's understanding with this, and a board retreat is a great place to do that. And then the third one is that there are no achievement gaps. This is a tough one because what we're talking about with an achievement gap is the difference in performance between a student who is, and we kind of use as the standard, what is the learning gap between white students and black students, or white students and Hispanic students. And so we want to make sure that any identified group in your school is performing at their highest potential level. There are no gaps there. We can't say we do really well with all students except for our Hispanic students. We have to do well with all of our students. And because we don't get to choose our students, then the important thing for us to remember is that we're going to work with them all. Now, you know as well as I do that there are always going to be people who say, yeah, we can't do that. We can't reach a high level of student success until we reach the parents. And I've seen people write editorials to the paper on that and talk about, well, education's never going to change till we get parents on board, till we get parents to do the things that we want them to do. Well, it's not the job of the school district or the individual school to salvage or change parents. And this is a quote this is actually attributed to me. Our job is the same as it has always been, to educate fully the child who enters our classroom on a daily basis. Our job is to use every tool in our formidable tool chest to take every child from the level where they are when they arrive at our school doors and help them reach their highest potential. When we've accomplished that, we can say we've been successful as individual schools and as a school district, not a moment before. That's pretty high expectations. So the next question that should come to mind is, are we able to do this? Can we do this? This doesn't suggest, we're not saying that there's no difference between students who live in one family and students who live in another family. Closing the achievement gap means you're going to be working on a whole lot of different things at the same time. You're going to look at the achievement gap between students who are in poverty. And poverty is one of the hardest things for us to get past. And I'll throw this in as a little aside here, that a study that was done in 1995, and actually was by my dissertation advisor, Dr. Bobby Malone, they did a study and they found that the only thing that is stronger than the impact of the poverty in a school is high achievement, expectations, an expectation that students are going to do well. So we have to have that expectation. If we don't have that expectation and we say, well, we're about as good as we can do, we're never going to make a change. So how do school boards do this? First, they have to believe that whether their school district is currently a high-performing organization or it needs to become a high-performing organization, then they, as a school board, have to give the permission, the power, as it were, to the superintendent to make this happen. Sometimes that's a difficult thing because sometimes board members want to get involved in things they shouldn't be involved in. They want to be involved in choosing the actual curriculum, and they want to determine what kids read, and they want to determine how they learn to read, how they learn to do math, what kind of things are included in a pre-calculus textbook, for example. But those are stepping below the line again. And so we have to think that through because it's important for that not to happen. So here's the question that I want you to think about as you observe a school board meeting and as you attend school board meetings. What happens in your school board meeting? How much time do they spend on the topic of student achievement? If your board is not discussing achievement, then they are wasting time. And especially if you're a district that's not performing where it is, where you want it to be, then that has to be flipped. So this takes us to the concept of a theory of action for change. Now, it's kind of a new topic. You may not have ever heard this before. but it's what beliefs drive the motivation that people have in this organization. So we're going to look at a theory of action which guides the actions so that it will achieve those results. Does that sound like we're talking in circles? In the school reform context, a theory of change is a set of beliefs that encompasses how children learn, what drives the behavior of the adults, the conditions that create organizational excellence, and the interplay between American democracy and democratic institutions. Ooh, that's a mouthful. For a school board, a theory of action is a set of beliefs given the board's theory of change about what board actions will lead to the fulfillment of the board's commitments. In other words, how do we get there from here? So, this is a big philosophical issue. When you establish yourself as a new superintendent and you're going into a district that has not been successful, exactly what do you do? Now, this doesn't mean, and I want to make sure we get this clear, that when you go in as a superintendent, everything that's happened in that district beforehand doesn't count. No, that's wrong. You can't say that everything that happened before you arrived is no good. You have to look at those things. You have to learn the history. So when you first go into a school district, you're not going to go in with, a marching band backing you up saying, all right, we're going to lead this district and we're going to be successful. You're going to continue and make some incremental changes. And then at first you look at, all right, can we be successful where we are? Well, the best answer to that is, how have we done before? If we haven't been successful in what we're doing, then we have to try something different. Now, second thing is, and this is dangerous, but I see this happen so many times, because superintendents have had something work in one school district, then they think it's going to work in that school district. So they bring sometimes even their own people, and they say, we're gonna be successful because of the fact that we are taking the people that came from another district and they worked in that district, so we're gonna have them come and work in this district and that'll solve all our problems. Guess what? That doesn't work. And it's an insult to all the teachers and principals who have already been in that district. And it says to them, what you did before doesn't matter. So what you really need to do, first one is continue the present course. Doesn't do much. Bring in your pet program, definitely, no. And then the third option is assess the needs of the district and create a personalized plan. All right. This means you're not just going to go, we're going to say, understanding by design. All right, so we're going to do all of that, and then it'll work. Or we're going to bring in restorative practices, and that's going to solve all the problems. You're going to have to look at the specific needs of each district. So what it requires of you as a superintendent is to be very well aware of theories of action. In other words, what can work? So let's take that to the next step. Why doesn't it happen very often? Sometimes it's because superintendents and boards don't have the concept that they have to work together. Sometimes the superintendent comes in and says, you hired me, shut up and get out of the way and let me lead. And that never works. So we have to define in our heads, what does it mean? It means that you're going to go in and not do what's always been done. And you're going to teach the board how not to get lost in all the stuff. I remember painfully a school board where it actually made the news because the school district had gone through the entire process of selecting curriculum. They were selecting a math curriculum as it happened. Everything went fine through the elementary. That was great. They didn't mind. The board was ready to approve that. Then it got to high school, and the board president said, I'm not going to approve this pre-calculus book. What? Now, he had had the opportunity, if he had wanted to be, a part of the program, of the committee that did this work. He chose not to be. It was another board member who sat in on the curriculum adoption, and his reason was there are tables and graphs in this pre-calculus book that are not appropriate for high school students. All right. Really? So what was it? And when he was pushed for an answer, he pointed out a specific graph which was showing percentages of mixed race marriages since 1960 something, I don't know, something like that. And he said, that's not an appropriate topic for our students to be talking about. All right, number one, they weren't talking about the topic. They were talking about graphs. How do you graph a number? And he actually held up the adoption of that, which is completely out of the range of what a board should be doing. So, again, radical change takes radical thought. And we've got to get school boards past the point of thinking about these little trivial things that they will talk about all the time. And then, as superintendents, you have to have a certain degree of freedom to say, you know what, I know this is the path we need to take, and I'm going to put my reputation on it. Let's do this. So, that's what it takes. So, yes, there's an answer. What do you do? How does a superintendent make long-term change? How does a board work with him? First thing, superintendent is not there because it's a stepping stone. Does that happen? Sure. Yes, it has happened. That some superintendents look at this job as, well, I'll do this for 3 years, then I'll go where I want to do. Stop. Go into that board with the concept of, I am going to be here and commit to long-term leadership, and I'm asking you as a board to do the same thing. And sometimes that means, instead of waiting until you get to the end of your contract renewing it, maybe they give you a 3-year contract, and then at the next year they give you another 3-year contract, so that you're constantly under contract. They know that they have you, you know that you're staying, and both of you are happy. And so the board has to commit, again, to staying above that governance line, following their own policies, and creating that climate which can be their support. And I've seen this happen. So there are different controls, the district controls in various theories of action. So let's look at this. In the 20th century model, instruction and operations were kind of kept, they were all within the same section, but they were kept separated. Instruction is the primary thing. Under managed instruction, kind of see here that everything is equal. School operations here, I think when let's keep going and we'll look at these specifically. In the 20th century model, the district maintains everything but instruction. So the district's in charge of all that, but there's accountability for the process. All right. For the next one, the managed instruction. It's a blend of division and franchise. Flexibility depends on the performance. If a school performs well, they are given flexibility in what they are required to do. Central office has the very important role of keeping their eye on instruction and manage that instruction to the level so that the kids not just reach equality, which is that every school does the same thing, but that students get equity. And the difference is equity means that the students get what they need. If a particular school has greater needs, then we're going to pour more resources into that school. And the district keeps tight accountability, and accountability is the compliance for that. Let's look at the performance empowerment model. Now, it can be tight or loose. In other words, the control is either really tight, where the superintendent looks at everything that's done, or the superintendent can take hands off and say, this is not how I want you to run your school. And as long as you do what brings success in your school, then we'll stay out of your way. We're not going to tell you to change things. And again, with results comes flexibility. In the final, which is the managed performance empowerment model, the central office is very much in charge, but there's flexibility because you as a school have control of nearly everything, and principals control based on their performance. I will tell you, I've worked in a district that did this, the managed performance empowerment model, and it was incredible. The director of elementary ed, who was in charge of 34 elementary schools, broke us down into groups based on what we needed to know. If there were principals who weren't good at interpreting data, then they taught them how to interpret data. And everything was based on the performance. So if you were successful in performing, then you had less oversight from the board. So, big questions, and this takes us right back to the beginning. Are we looking at incremental improvement? Is that going to work? And sometimes you have to acknowledge that some people are better than others at incremental improvement. It's kind of the idea of nudging things forward a little bit at a time. Or if there's going to be complete fundamental change. In other words, what we have done has not worked. So then we decide, are we going to do a managed instruction or performance empowerment? You can do the whole combination of those, which is managed performance empowerment, and then you have a successful school district. And the board works in harmony with the superintendent, and you're able to see that accomplished. And that takes us to the end of this lesson, and we will see you again at the next one.